Yes, we're recording. Okay, there it is. I am here with Tyler Janke.
Yonky, you got it.
I know. I
Whatever,
know.
Tyler.
I know. TJ Maxx in the house. How you know, buddy?
Good. Thanks for doing this. I'm excited. Been
No,
excited
I'm
about.
excited. This is gonna be fun. I think it wasn't the last one, Patrick. The last one that I had you on was with Legal Man. It was the last one we did solo.
Yeah, well, I looked back. Yeah, the Legal Man one happened before I was on.
Oh, really? Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking for some reason I was thinking the Legal Man was the last time I had you on.
It was 2 months before that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And Patrick MacFarlane, my brother from another mother.
Yeah, how's it going? Sad I won't see you at Childeberg this year, but the next
You're not
one,
going?
right? I can't. I got a baby due. So
Congrats.
wife is heavily pregnant. She's due in early July, so
Oh, okay.
but yeah.
Hey,
Normally the babies are early.
Handle your duties, man. Handle your duties.
Yeah.
Nobody can be mad at you for that. But yeah, we'll definitely see you down the road shortly. Maybe we can convince Scott to do some sort of Libertarian Institute event, and we can all
in the Twin Cities.
I'm always debating Childeberg or Porkfest, and I haven't done either. But what's your take?
I mean, I prefer Childeberg, but it's because I know like the people that put it on, and
I've only been to Childeberg, so I don't know about Porkfest, but Reed always tells me that Porkfest is where it's at. And
I'm sure Porkfest is fun. I'm like you, I've never been, but I just Childeberg is convenient for me. It's only 5 hours away. Yeah. I know Carr and all those guys, so it's like, it's fun for me. Because I know everybody.
Awesome too.
Yeah.
And this year at the Institute is we have a whole tent at Porkfest this year, so it's going to be a to-do. And I think Kyle and Connor and Scott and Keith are going to be there. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, cool. That's cool. Yeah, it's hard to get me to leave my house.
Yeah,
it's like I quit driving truck. I quit driving over the road, and ever since I'm just like, no, I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
It's a week is a long time, especially when you have kids and stuff. So
yeah. And then especially going up to New Hampshire, I'd have to figure out I'd have to do like a road trip so I could take my dogs with me. I'd have to make sure somebody was coming by to feed my chickens, because I wouldn't leave my dogs for that amount of time,
Well, my wife would never let me take the kids to something like Porkfest, even though everyone says it's a kid-friendly event.
I would not take kids to Childeberg.
No, I wouldn't either. No.
I know there are people that do, but that would not be my preference.
My wife wants to go, but for us, it would have to be a flight either way. So it's just, and then I have kids graduating this year. Next year, that's the plan. I wanted to do it. I wanted to go out there and do like a Kill podcast type of thing. That we do that on my show, Libertarian Podcast Review. And it's like Kill Tony, but it's with politics or whatever you want to do. And I thought it would be fun to do a live episode like that, especially that kind of event, but maybe next year.
Yeah, well, there are so many people out there, and a lot of them are podcasters. And so it wouldn't be hard for you to find somebody who'd be willing to sit down and give an opinion on something.
So, I think what happens, though, is that you just end up having too much fun. And then it's like, I don't want to stop having fun and set everything up. And then at some point you're either too drunk or something else, and you're just like, But you want to do
Go ahead. I've gone to so many events where the idea was I'm going to do a podcast, and then the weekend's done, and you didn't do any because you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's like,
right. Yeah. No, I don't even bring my podcast stuff with me when I go to Childeberg. I just bring my dogs and my beer. Yeah. It's like, all right, I know what I'm here for. If somebody wants to stop me and talk to me, I'll sit down and talk to them. But otherwise, I'm not here to podcast. I'm not here to do that.
So. Yeah.
But all right. Well, so what struck up this conversation and this idea for us three was there was a court case that Patrick MacFarlane lit some bridges on fire over. And so I figured we'd dig into this. Now, I honestly had no idea what the hell was going on. I just saw people attacking Patrick. That's all. I was just like, oh, no. I ain't doing it. I don't know. I still haven't even looked into the court case. So I was like, oh no, this should be cool. I can get Tyler and Patrick to fill me in. They're attorneys. They understand what's going on. And then I can kind of give my 2 cents. So Patrick, do you want to give us like a breakdown of what the court case was, what happened, and why it is that there was this infighting going on in the Libertarian Party once again?
So I found basically the Mises Caucus had put out a tweet responding to this story about a California family law case where essentially what had happened is that the court contracted a private security or a private service to come to remove 2 children from the custody of their father. I think they were at their grandmother's house at the time that the private service actually showed up and removed them from his custody. And Tyler's actually a bit more familiar with this because he actually practices in California.
Mm-hmm.
But my understanding is that there's when children are estranged from the other parent in a family law action, there is a option to contract with this private service to remove the children and reunify them with their estranged parent at this facility. It's like I don't know, a psychologist camp or some kind of a retreat where they do it in like a clinical setting. And the Mises Caucus had quote tweeted it and said that, this is just emblematic of the corruption of the family law system. And this is the jackboot of the state, basically removing children and returning these children to their mother who they say is abusive and sexually abuses them. And if, me looking at it, I kind of figured there might be more to the story. So I did a little bit of digging, and it turns out that, yes, there is more to the story, is that there was actually a proceeding, contested hearing where the judge found that the children had been manipulated into lying about the abuse at the hands of their mom by the father. And the father was the one who had custody at this point in time. And so the judge ruled that the children needed to be removed from the father's custody or placement, and had to be placed in this reunification clinical setting to be reunited with their mom because they had been so manipulated and brainwashed by their dad into accusing the mom falsely. And I assume it was proven in court. And, I don't say this without a grain of salt, of course, because none of us were there in that proceeding. And I don't know how it works in California, Tyler, if proceedings like that would be confidential to the point where they'd be closed to the public. But we'll probably may never know what happened or what evidence was presented. But at the very least, that was the whole story. It wasn't what Mises Caucus was putting out there. And I think it's important that if we're going to open our mouths about things like this, we better goddamn well get it right and actually know what we're talking about. And that's not to say that everything that was done is justified. The optics are really, really bad. But I think that libertarians get into this point where they think that, in Ancapistan, problems like this would just be magically solved by the power of the market. And I think the reality is that in situations like this, you need some kind of force to come in and to take these children from the situation. If it's been adjudicated that the children are being manipulated and made to lie by their dad, well, what about the mother's rights to be a parent? So these rights have to be adjudicated and they have to be enforced. And just because we believe in Ancapistan doesn't mean that things are always cut and dry, black and white. Sometimes, we're going to have to get down in the muck and deal with these imperfect, bits of information and come out with some kind of a resolution where people's rights are protected to the best of our abilities. And sometimes that looks like a private security company showing up to peacefully remove these children. I mean, they weren't injured. It looks bad, but they weren't injured. No one got shot. Nothing bad like that happened. So I just think that we got to get this right. And I guess I'm not afraid of opening my mouth to correct the record or try to salvage, prevent the Mises Caucus from participating in kind of clickbait nonsense that we need to be better than that. So that's my 2 cents to introduce it.
Tyler?
Yeah. There's so much here. First of all, Patrick's completely right. I took umbrage with the Mises Caucus Twitter account a few weeks before, and maybe we can talk about this afterwards when they posted this thing about they said a squatter took over an Airbnb, and once again, it was California based. Fine. And so I'm like, something's wrong with this. And I looked into it, and it's clickbait, what you're talking about. I got out of the GOP, and I don't be involved in that because I found myself just going along with whatever the establishment was always saying at the time. War is good here. Oh, now the Balkans, it's bad. It's good. It just, you're all over the board. You're not consistent. So I don't want to be caught into these things. So then I come into the Libertarian Party, and now I start to see this stuff, and I'm like, no, I'm pushing back. Patrick is completely right about the process of this. Let me just say, this cases, family law stuff. I do family law in California, so this is right up my alley. The filings themselves should be confidential. I haven't been able to find them at all. I did find a transcript of the reunification therapist that's now taking these kids. I did find because she was involved in the original. It was a 2-day hearing, as you said, contested. So they got all that. Okay, so the filings themselves are going to be sealed. They're not going to have that. But the courtroom has been open. Typically, a lot of these things, especially we're talking about sexual abuse, they'll close the courtroom. They only allow those parties in. This judges have been allowing everyone in. And matter of fact, the dad's attorney now is filing a 170 motion to dismiss or disqualify her. And some of that has to do with her statements because there's all these, this is public. Anyway, there's some confusion. My biggest thing with family law and the LP and doing all this is we don't live in Kapistan. You have the family courts are here, and until we abolish them, which would be great, and have the government dealing with this, you have to play by the rules that are out there. So if you are not going to know what those are and you're not going to prepare yourself well, the men's rights movement, which I'm for, has also been problematic because it sets these men up for having problems and just being using it as an excuse. Fine, things are against me, therefore I won't try, or I'll break all the rules and I'll do this and this and this, and then it's not my fault, it's the court's fault. But if you want your kids, then you're going to have to play by the rules, and you have to know what those rules are and how everything's set up. So you being a victim in this case doesn't help. The biggest people that are helped by reunification, and we can talk about alienation, are men. This is a private camp that helps reunify mostly fathers with their kids. So now you're coming out and saying these camps are horrible and we should get rid of them. Therefore, you are now putting yourself against a situation that is helping men the most. And that is going to be a problem going forward. The group, you're right, it's two private organizations. Right Direction, I think, was the people that come in and they take kids a lot of times. And I actually listened to a podcast with the guy that does this. And their idea is to, one, talk to the kids, do exactly what you saw there, let them vent, not have the family involved. Because at some point, you're going to have, and maybe I could give an example here too, or let you talk and then we'll go on from there. But if the kid is 15, this girl was 15, her brother was 11, if they don't want to go, what are you going to do with those kids to make them go? You're either going to force them physically, it's not a 3-year-old, you just take them out of their child seat and move, or you're going to have to physically make them go. So if the court says, and the court could be wrong, but this is what the problem with it, the optics look bad, you're taking these kids. But if you're not doing that, then you're stuck. So either, maybe if the court ruling was wrong, I will say this about it. The transcript I did read, the mother and the children that had already been with the father, they had already been in reunification therapy with just a private therapist for like a year. Halfway through this, remember, if they're doing that, they're with dad. They're not getting private time with mom. Halfway through that, the girl starts to say that mom was sexually abusing her. I think this is what triggered everybody to think that this was, okay, you're probably lying. And then they had evidence come out. And I don't know what that is because I haven't seen it all.
The one time that you and I did a podcast together, this is really the conversation we dug into, because I've been through the family court system here in Texas, and I have very strong opinions about the way that it's set up, and how mothers are automatically given custody in a lot of places. I don't know anything about California law. I do know that a lot of people in California are crazy, and I don't want to deal with their law. I think I'd be better off dealing with Islamic law than I would California law. based upon my beliefs and the way I live my life. But I can see where it would be very easy to jump on the bandwagon of don't take the children away from a father that was awarded custody without knowing all of the facts of the case. But I don't understand why they want to get into this conversation, this argument with people that are looking into the facts of the case.
Let me just say real quick, and then I'll let Patrick go. My looking into this, there's a lot of bloggers and stuff taking on this on. They are very much against reunification. It's mostly moms. So it's almost like a way to subvert the men's rights issue to come into this. They attack these reunification therapists. Matter of fact, one lost his license in 1992, and they brag about it because Kamala Harris was the person, the AG at the time, that was able to strip him of his license. So there's all kinds of the problems with that. California, it's for the most part, they try to say, equal time for the parents. So it's not such a bad thing, but men don't prepare well. And then they get behind the 8 ball. And then there's all kinds of other problems, red flag laws with DVROs and such. But go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I think I didn't know if I clarified in my initial kind of tirade there about that the thing that Mises Caucus quote tweeted was the actual video of the private service coming and removing the children.
Yeah.
Now, the part that was in the actual tweet was a snippet that was taken from a longer video. But what you saw in the video they quote tweeted was, okay, well, we tried talking, we tried letting the children vent, they refused. Now we have the court order and we have to physically remove them, which you would think libertarians would be all about, right? But like I said, none of the kids were hurt. They made it seem like this was a police brutality situation, and it wasn't that. But yeah, I don't think prior when I've talked about this, I don't think I was as even-handed as Tyler was when he talked about it with Garbage Man on his podcast, because, we really, even I don't know what happened in that hearing. Now, it could be, I would assume that everything happened on the up and up, but that is not always the case. So, but my larger point is that this is emblematic of a broader thing that we see all the time in the law, is that people who are not interested in the case see a headline or they see the result, and then they get pissed off and make assumptions that fit their worldview. Now, this happened in this county where there was a person who was driving intoxicated, and they hit an Amish buggy and they killed the woman. Now, the DA didn't have enough evidence for homicide by intoxicated use of a motor vehicle. And the reason why she couldn't charge that out is because he got into the crash and then chugged a bunch of alcohol, and people saw him doing this. And there was no way to determine what his intoxication level was at the time of the actual crash. And so throughout the court proceedings, you have what people in this county, what they perceive to be a slap on the wrist for such a brutal crime that occurred. And they were all pissed off. But these were all people. They had not attended a single one of the court proceedings. They weren't there at sentencing. They didn't watch the trial. They didn't know what evidence came in. They didn't know what arguments were made. They don't know what the law is. And then they get pissed off and they make a conclusion that fits their own worldview. And then they hate the DA and they hate the judge, and they're mad about those things. Mises Caucus should be better than that. I mean, we should be better than that. And I guess it tapped into a larger frustration that I've had with Libertarian Party leadership, is that they have people at their disposal like Tyler, like me, this isn't about me, but it's about these people who actually are experts, who are available, and who are more than happy to help. But it's frustrating from my perspective to see us getting these questions wrong when I'm available as a resource, and I'm more than happy to try and help, especially when we're getting it wrong on a Twitter account that has almost 100,000 followers.
But Spike Cohen joined in on this, putting the same tweet out basically.
Yeah, and doubled down.
And it's a frustration issue for me.
Well, see, here's the problem, and part of the reason I don't engage with libertarian politics, even though I work with the Institute. Scott and I are close friends. I'm obviously friends with Patrick. I'm friends with tons of libertarians. But the thing that I have an issue with is that knee-jerk reaction of it's the government's fault immediately without knowing the facts, which is what Patrick's pointing out. Like that what they were doing was actually fueling their base because that's the way that they want to see things. They want it to always be the government's fault. And the dad, the mom, all these parties involved, there are responsibilities. Having been through divorces, having had kids taken from me, not physically, not like this, but being in situations where I have visitation rights, where I only get to see my kids every couple of weeks or whatever, understanding what that is and how that works, when you start really reflecting on your life and taking stock of what's going on in your life and what went wrong, what went right, blah, 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 you can start accounting for your own mistakes. And there's a real possibility that the dad was terrified of losing his kids and being put in a situation where he wouldn't get to see his kids because of the way the family court system is set up and its history. And so he did manufacture this timeline, this story about abuse, and getting to the bottom of that for the sake of the children, because the children, no matter what the situation is, the children need both their mom and their dad in their lives. And if there's a problem, then yes, you definitely want to get to the bottom of that and separate the kids from that problem. But you do not want to penalize these children and ruin their future relationships because one parent is being egotistical or narcissistic or selfish in this situation. And so you have to be very careful about that.
I don't know if you're saying that, look, dad felt like he had no choice but to then maybe help the daughter fabricate this story. I think that's possible. And that's,
I'm not saying it's definite. I'm saying it's possible. And that it's,
but I also think it's evil. I'm just letting you know, I think that's an evil way to go, to use your kids as some sort of, like, be the dad that doesn't say, I don't never say anything bad about my kid's mom. I don't even say anything about my stepkid's dad, who's not in the picture. I mean, just, they know they're smart kids. They can figure this out. What's interesting is this is a 15-year-old. She's then posted stuff on Instagram. She's kind of getting some popularity out of all this. Who knows her motivations? We don't want to say a 15-year-old can make the decision to transition, but now we're going to take this girl's points as the gospel truth that she was perhaps abused. And I don't want to go, but I just want to mention, I had a case just recently. Guy comes to me and he had a restraining order with his ex-wife. She'd had it on him and he had a daughter. It had then been done and over. So he goes over to see his daughter, and the ex-wife immediately files another restraining order on him, even though the other one was okay. It was done. This one, anyway, so he gets it. So he comes to me. We're going to go to trial. The daughter is now 17 years old. Okay. The wife has moved on. She now has a new partner. It's Frank, but Frank is actually Francine, who's trying to grow a beard, right? So mom's dating a transitioning lesbian. I don't know. And the daughter wants to testify. Typically doesn't happen. If it's over 14, you can petition. The judge will let you do it. She's 17 years old. She comes to there and she's telling the judge about how she doesn't want to be with dad at all, how he tried to kill her at one point. And so I get a cross-examiner, and you're usually pretty, careful with the kids. But when she said that, and my guy was very fine. He hadn't really done anything, even the initial time. And I said, so tell me about how the situation where he tried to kill you. So she describes where he's taking her to a friend's birthday party in the car, has a GPS. He goes down this road. He's going to turn around. There's a dead end road, and he's going to kill her. And I'm like, well, so what actually happened? Well, he had the address wrong in the GPS, and he turned around and he took her to the party. This was not a killing situation. Mm-hmm. She had been brainwashed by mom, scared to death, and she was part of it. So what are you going to do? What did the judge say? Daughter doesn't want to have anything to do with you. She's obviously been alienated. Should have he had her removed? I mean, she's in a bad situation. These are the kind of things I see all the time. So kids will lie, women lie, men lie. Family court's just a despicable place for all this stuff. So that's a situation that I see these, and so I see the tweet there by Mises Caucus, and I know that there's more involved. It could be a bad situation, right? It could have been totally completely different, but you don't need to rile your party up for this and all your people. But anyway, that's my personal story.
No, oh, go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I'm just going to say that, I have been a critic of Libertarian Party leadership and the Mises Caucus. And I try to always kind of hedge it a little bit by saying, we're not in their position. And when the takeover happened, you're trying to marshal an entire organization that had been defunct, in our opinion, for so long. And you're learning these things, and you have a big responsibility, and you can't please everyone. And so I try to hedge my criticism with that too. But at the same time, with great responsibility comes scrutiny. And there's no bigger arena than that, in my opinion, than practicing law. I mean, you might make a mistake. I mean, people make mistakes all the time. That's why cases get appealed and everything. But we're not going to treat attorneys like me and Tyler with kid gloves just because it's hard to be a lawyer. I'm not going to treat the Mises Caucus and their social media team with kid gloves because it's hard to be in charge of a social media campaign. We got to get these things right. That's why we took the party over, right?
Yeah. And I'll say I'm not really against the Mises. Maybe I'm coming at it from somewhat of a biased situation. They post things, and it's easy to say, look at what's happening in California, all you dopes out there. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But you guys are like, it's like the people who are taking Colin Kaepernick, right? He's kneeling. He's, police brutality. He's our spokesman. And then he wears a shirt with Fidel Castro. And you're like, maybe pick someone else. There's plenty of cases and spokesmen you can have. He's probably not the one when he shows a Fidel Castro shirt, right? I mean, one guy that would suppress you more than anybody else. So I don't know. Just anyway.
I think my whole point is that the family court system is ugly. There's a lot of, I mean, this, Tyler, you deal with this daily. There are a lot of emotions that are going into this thing, right? And like you said, if the dad did convince the daughter to say these things and brainwash her, that is evil, and that should not happen, right? I remember, I've told this story several times on my podcast, so I'm sure y'all both heard it, but I remember one time sitting with my daughter. She's 11 years old. She's playing with my calluses on my hands, and she looks at me dead in the eye, and she says, "Dad, mom wishes you would go away so we could be a normal family," and that's like, to me, that is not only painful to me, and I mean, yeah, it stung, and it was hard for me. There was a lot of bitterness that I held on to over that situation. But whenever I got older and I started thinking about it, and I started thinking, what are the results on the child's psyche?
Yeah.
And so I never put myself in a situation to talk bad about my ex-wives. Number one, I knew that was a propaganda battle I could not win. I didn't have the time with the kids that the mom had. It was not a war I was going to win if I engaged in. I didn't have the money to go to court and do all these things and fight for custody and fight these battles on a legal front. So I knew that I had to be very careful. And there was a period when my daughter had accused me of abusing her. And her logic behind that was because I wasn't there when she was growing up. But I didn't choose to not be there. You see what I'm saying? And so there are these definitions of abuse and of rape and all these different things have changed so much that they don't mean the same thing all the time. And when you're engaging in a situation like that, there definitely needs to be somebody that can speak to that child, get to the bottom of what the problem is, where this line of thought, these ideas came from, and help that child out. Because ultimately, you are creating generations of victims, whether you intend to or not. And that is not good for the child. It's not good for society. It's not good for anybody involved here. It will eventually come back to bite the parents in the ass. It's not going to be a good situation.
Completely agree. And without, look, I know you mess around with a lot of post-libertarians, and they don't necessarily like. I'm still libertarian, but I love a lot of people that are, especially on that side still. But I will say that when I left the GOP and I became more libertarian, and I decided, I'm like, my wife is too, and I just live my life that way. Biggest thing, what I mean by that is, there's nothing that we're not victims at all. You make your way in life. You know, you make your own. We have chickens. We do all kinds of stuff, and you put it out of your mind. And there is so much more less victimhood mentality, I feel, coming from that. Now, this can be just me, because there's obviously a lot of parties, people all over the board for this. But I just think people need to. This is my plea to the men out there: is you have to understand you're not a victim in family court, no matter what state you're in. You got to figure out the rules. You've got to take care of yourself and do the right things, prepare for it. Men don't prepare for litigation. And I think that is the biggest problem. Women are making a schedule. They're doing all these things. They're saving all your text messages. And then the guy comes in, thinks it's going to be fine. And it's not. So number one, don't put your dick in crazy, because that's probably the biggest solution out there.
I think it's strange. I mean, you mentioned the post-libertarians. I find myself in this weird liminal state where there's things I understand and agree with that they say, and there's things I understand and agree with about, like, Mises style libertarians. I'm kind of weirdly in the middle, because there's things I hate about both of them. But one thing I really do understand in a needed critique, and I've expressed this several times, is that I was saying even before COVID happened that the problem with libertarians is that they make libertarianism their identity, and they have personal problems, emotional problems with themselves, and they project those problems upon the state. Because if you can project your problems upon something, it's not your fault, and you don't have to confront those problems. And I think that libertarians do that a lot. I did that a lot, and I recognize that about myself. And at the same time, there's also this, I don't know, this practicality to some of what the post-libertarians are saying, is that, like, listen, we live in the real world, and we have to play by the real world rules. And I think I have come to understand that a lot more, being a lawyer and being in these positions. Like, do I agree with some, like, sovereign state, sovereign citizen, like, complete voluntarist people? They're not one and the same. But do I agree with them that we should just, that the court is illegitimate, that it doesn't have jurisdiction? In theory, yes, I agree. But the state is going to dance with you whether you want to dance with it or not. And that's they're the only show in town. And so I tell my clients a lot that, when the government is like a gorilla. When the gorilla wants to dance with you, you're going to dance with the fucking gorilla. And you're going to dance as long as the gorilla wants to dance. And that's just the way it is. So
I gave up the moniker libertarian in 2019 when I heard Tucker Carlson compare Hillary Clinton's foreign policy to libertarian foreign policy. And I was like, if that's what the mainstream thinks libertarian is, I don't want anything to do with that. But I don't. My problem is that the way I approach all these subjects is not necessarily from an ideological standpoint. It's more from a personal responsibility standpoint. And I see that a lot of people, I guess this is kind of co-signing on what Patrick just said. What a lot of people think libertarianism is passing the buck and blaming somebody else. And it's like, no, it takes two to tango here. And so when you're in a situation, like when you're going through a divorce, let's say, I had somebody ask me the other day, when you look at your divorce, or well, I've been through 2 divorces, but when you look at them, who do you blame for that? And I always just say it's a combination of both of us. You know, there were times where I made mistakes. There were times where she made mistakes. There were things that were going on that both of us did wrong. And so sometimes it was my reaction to things she was doing. Sometimes it was her reaction to things I was doing. But you're both playing a role here. And until these people grow up and take on responsibility and understand what that responsibility looks like and discipline themselves in their own lives, then they're gonna have a hard time. And what I see a lot of these people are doing is they are adopting libertarian philosophy to excuse their lack of responsibility and their hedonistic lifestyle. And I don't agree with that. Whereas if you want to give me like a Scott Horton or a Tom Woods or a Lou Rockwell, I'm like, yeah, those guys are great. I love what they say. I like their philosophies. Like, I don't disagree with them at all. It's still the best political philosophy out there, but it does not become the identity and the excuse to live a degenerate and irresponsible lifestyle and not have to pay consequences for the actions that you take. And it seems to me like you get that a lot. The state is, unfortunately, it is something that we have to live within and we have to deal with. If you want to talk about shrinking the size of government and where that shrinkage should take place, and yeah, we can get into all that philosophical talk, but how does that actually add to your ability to provide for your family, to maneuver in life? And I don't see that as a way that, as something that you can incorporate in, as some might say from the post-libertarian side, as praxis. You know, and so I changed a lot of the direction of my show because I noticed that there was a lot of people pointing the finger at the state, but never discussing or contemplating how people could change their own lives and maneuver around this state and work within the laws and in the boundaries that were given and make their own lives better. And it seemed like there was a lot of wasted breath and a lot of wasted time there.
I hate to. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, sorry, where I digress from it is I don't agree with the pursuing power to crush your enemies type thing. That's kind of where I draw the line with some post-libertarian thinking.
Yeah, I understand that.
I depart a big time on foreign policy too, a large time on foreign policy.
Hell no, nuke Ukraine. No, I'm just playing.
With some, but yeah, but anyways, I think it is right on it. I mean, but just, yeah, actually working within your life and getting to know getting to know your county sheriff is so important, and going to board meetings and talking to people, and if you really want to get involved. But yeah, anyways, Tyler.
Well, I was just I hate to make this comparison of philosophy to religion in a sense, but you know, as a Christian, sin is out there. I don't blame. I'm not a victim in my life because, you know, everything's not perfect. And I feel the same way kind of about libertarianism. Okay, I love this philosophy, this voluntary, that would be great, but it's not happening. It doesn't mean that I don't still have these ideals that I'm striving for and that I believe in. And, you know, I'm not going to aggress against someone for, you know, whatever, but you have to know where you're at in life, and you have to teach your kids what's going on and, you know, the realities of where we're at. And I think that's maybe part of the problem with some of the, you know, post-libertarians like to just, they leave this state, or they leave the libertarian ideas, and then it's just trash it from behind. Yeah. And they've kind of made some of that, but I still like them. I still like these guys a lot. And I think for the reality, it's like, we have a lot in common still. So as an example, I could read Atlas Shrugged and just basically say, okay, I like a lot of this. I don't care for her anti-God stuff. And I can just dish it out and pick the parts I like. That's just the way my brain can work. I don't know. Maybe that's a coping mechanism.
You you're never going to agree with anybody 100%. That's just never going to happen. And I think it's ridiculous. And I think, and I'm sorry, Patrick, I'll let you go here in a second. I think part of it is a maturity thing. Like what us three are talking about when it comes to this court case or post-libertarianism or libertarianism, it's stepping back, accepting uncomfortable realities, and then figuring out how to operate within these realities and not casting blame. You can only control yourself. So let's take as much responsibility and do what we can in our own lives to make our lives better, more free, and not worry so much about those things out there that we don't like, but we can't change.
I was fine to coexist with post-libertarianism, but then they went after the Institute and Scott and my friends and coworkers. So that was where, I kind of declared war. But now I just think they're irrelevant. So fuck them. But
I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen any of this.
Well, you weren't on Twitter at that point in time.
Oh, okay.
But again, Twitter's not real life, so what the fuck does it matter anyway?
It is interesting how when someone goes after you, like you personally or your friends, that you tend to have a Safadine Amos. You guys probably know about him. I did he was on an interview with Jeff Deist, and I listened to this one segment, and I'm like, oh, he's full of shit. Matter of fact, I said he's lying. And then he found it on Twitter, and he came into my DMs, and he lit me up. And he said, "Oh, I made a mistake. Okay, I was completely wrong, but you're a piece of shit." Da, 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 da. So he goes, "Go read my book." So I read his book, and I'm like, "Oh God, it's even worse than I thought." So I did a Substack on that. So I think he's kind of a creepy guy. And I listened to a podcast with him yesterday, and I'm like, but for this stuff where he totally misrepresented something, he's fine. But that's the problem I have. Him, Phil Magnus, some of these others, they've gone and you're like, I believe a lot of things you're saying. And then there's this one section where you're like, oh, you're such a piece of shit. It makes me wonder about everything else you say, right? I'm just taking it on value that you're presenting it. So once again, it comes back to these tweets and these court cases of, let's be a little skeptical. Let's not just be the Republicans that Steven Crowder put something out there about China and we all just jump on board and it's just riling up the base. Let's have some understanding. Maybe we'll talk about this one. They also put the thing, it was Airbnb. There's this lady and this black lady going around videoing and saying she had an Airbnb for this person, 30 days. And now she's like, won't leave. And she goes, and I can't get her out. They call the police and won't get her out. So once again, Mises Caucus tweets this out and they're like, squatters' rights are in California and it's ridiculous and da-da-da. And I'm like, something's wrong. I literally went through every state to see the notice requirements and what it takes. There's many states much worse than California. What happens is you've got a landlord and a tenant. That's basically what happened when you start to have Airbnb. That's exactly what's the situation. Mm-hmm. They did it for over 30 days. Now, if they want to stay or if you want to kick them out, you have to give them notice. You rent a place. I go and rent from Tommy. I'm in there for a year. The lease is up. Now I'm going to go on a month-to-month. We don't sign a new agreement. We're on a month-to-month rent, a lease agreement. Just that's the way it would default. And he's got to give me notice to kick me out. That's the situation that happened. So there's many states that are worse than California. So I took this. It didn't seem right. Everyone's blowing this up, and I'm like, and then of course I get shit on because I live in California. But
before I comment on that, I want to say earlier I was not talking about Pete and Buck and Mark because I like Pete, Buck, and Mark. When I was disparaging post-libertarians, I really like them. I'm not talking about them. Anyways,
nice.
I'm in their camp. Yeah.
He's talking about LB.
No, there was a short exchange.
I'm messing.
Anyways,
LB is one of the nicest guys. You and him would actually have a really good conversation.
Yeah, maybe we would. And I'm open to talk with anybody, pretty much. So whatever. Twitter's not real life. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think we need to.
No,
dig up all that crap. I kind of have an idea of who you're talking about and what you're talking about, but because I am in a group chat with a lot of these guys, and so I think I know what you're talking about. But it's like whatever. I've gotten into it with some of them about different things too. Like I argue with them. It's just I'm still friends with them. I'll argue with them and then we'll be laughing 5 minutes later. It's like whatever.
Well, I guess life's too short to die mad. So whatever.
Yeah,
it's whatever at this point.
I don't take disagreements personal though. I find it fun to kind of debate and banter back and forth, and then then tell a joke and be done with it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times if somebody says something I disagree with, I'll just poke and prod at them on that subject until I irritate them. But that's just my way. It's just how I am. So I don't take any of it personal. When you're looking, I agree with what Patrick was saying earlier, that, and this was what kind of like caught me off guard whenever the whole situation started, was instead of turning to Patrick and saying, oh, wait, you are an attorney, you're a resource that we have at our disposal that's actually on our side for the majority of our goals. Would you mind clarifying what's going on or what you see? Because I'm a truck driver, man. I don't know lawyer talk. This is why I got 2 attorneys on here to talk about this stuff. I don't know this stuff, right? And I'm not expected to know this stuff, but I shouldn't go around acting like I know what I'm talking about when I have no clue what I'm talking about.
I mean, it's kind of frustrating. I mean, the Mises Caucus Twitter account unfollowed me over this. And I guess from my perspective, it's like, I mean, it's been said, right, that if you have criticism, you should voice it on the down low. You shouldn't voice it publicly. But what do you do when you try to voice it on the down low and nothing happens? You get frustrated. Maybe you should try it. Maybe I should have tried harder to DM the account and say, hey, listen, you're fucking up here. Stop. I don't know. But at the same time, do they have an obligation to listen to me about anything? No, I guess not. But I'll just say that Tyler could probably attest to this too, is that, I have a business and the business is going well. I'm making money. I have responsibilities. I have clients. For 6 years, I've devoted my life to this cause, and I've spent thousands of hours doing what I do and trying to get respect and have people listen to you when you talk and feel like you're making a difference, and that libertarian leadership is paying attention at least, or you're affecting what the messaging is. And just seeing them fuck up over and over again on all these things is so incredibly frustrating to me, and it makes me not want to have anything else to do with this movement. I'm kind of at that point. I haven't really been doing too much stuff lately, and that's just where I'm at. It's been 6 years with this, man, and it just feels, when something like that happens and I get unfollowed instead of listened to, that just makes me real pissed off.
Yeah, well, one, they've never followed me, so you're already a step above.
Yeah, well, maybe I should shut up.
Right. No, I get where you're at there, and so a lot of the things I'm trying to do is, like you said earlier, local stuff, and I know you've done that. I mean, there's nothing better I could do than I rant and rave about some things, and then someone contacts me about doing something local, and yeah, that's about I can do. I'm not going to be a Dave Smith going out on the national level. And that sounds like a lot of trouble too. I mean, I couldn't imagine that, but and I don't say that, they put out a tweet and they should have listened to you or I, but what was interesting is I chimed in on what you were saying there. And then the shit I get is just unbelievable. And it's like, I'm trying to help, this is something I do on a daily basis. Maybe don't make yourself look like a complete moron following along with this, but that's your beat. So,
yeah.
How could other than stepping back and looking at more expert, I've noticed that another problem that the Mises caucuses seem to have is with some of the messaging that's coming out of different areas, specifically New Hampshire. And I know Reed is heavily involved in New Hampshire. And so it creates this dividing line whenever you're going after somebody like Reed, who has a lot of followers. He has a big podcast. He's made a name for himself. He's done a lot of work, and he's put in a lot of hours like you, Patrick. to build that brand and who he is. And, you know, they'll go after him. And it's like, hold on, like maybe these people that have been doing this work, that have been putting forth the effort and the time, have something constructive to say, because you were all about utilizing my platform or Patrick's platform or Reed's platform to catapult yourself into a position of power. And now you're in that position of power and you're just burning these bridges because we might have some criticism for you. And I'm not saying I really helped the Mises Caucus that much. I talked to Angela a couple of times. That's about it, you know. So it's but I'm just using that as an example. Like there's almost like an underappreciation for those that have kind of paved the path to build that popularity within that Mises Caucus.
Yeah, and I've just kind of waffled about this because, you know, I could be the asshole here, and it could be that these conversations shouldn't be happening past leadership, is that this should be brought directly to leadership and expressed, you know, to them personally. But how do you get that audience? You know what I mean? And how do you go about doing that? And why should leadership give a fuck what I have to say or what we have to say? You know, what Tyler has to say about this tweet, or, you know, what Meredith might have to say about this tweet, being a California family law attorney herself. Or, you know, I guess for me, it just gets personal because, you know, seeing the Mises Caucus get so buddy with Tim Pool, and I wrote a 4,000 word essay about why Tim Pool is wrong about China and what
you
Mises
are a bit
Caucus,
obsessed with Tim Pool.
I have been, yes. But I mean, they're going on his show all the time. And it's like the topic of China comes up and they just get bulldozed over by Tim. And I hand you the exact talking points that you could lead with. And it just, you know how many hours I spent writing that fucking thing? You know, if I had billed private clients for that, I probably could have made 5 or 10 grand, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think the only person I've ever seen go on Tim Pool's show and stand up to
yeah.
China. Yeah, Pete. Pete was the only one who was like, no. And he prepared for that for over a week. And he was like, he was nervous about that because he's like, this subject better come up and I better be good on it.
Scott did it too, but Scott is Scott. But Pete did it. Pete did it because, in the way Pete did it was so effective, because Pete spent an hour talking about the pussy ass left, and then he's the biggest, baddest motherfucker, you know, the biggest right winger, and then China comes up and he says, "I ain't afraid of no China," you know. That it was perfect. It was great.
Yeah, and so that, but that. Let me just say this real quick, because I just got to get this off my chest, because this is one of the things about the Mises Caucus that bothers me. It seems like it's become about one or two people and not about the ideas.
I can see that. Sorry. Tom.
Yeah. No. And I think it's kind of the same problem you had before the takeover, which is big fish, small pond. So the takeover happens. Now it's our group. And oh, look, I go to the California convention here. It's a few people, and our people take over, and suddenly you're the head. Adrian, he's the head of California, which is awesome. But it's not. There's 50, 60 people there making this decision, or maybe it's 130. I think it was a little bit. The point is, once again, it's easy to kind of get in these positions, and now you're this. The LP, and you're taking it over, but in the reality, we're still small. So we have all this in-group fighting, and we know everybody. And so there's still going to be those problems. I personally, these things with, I haven't even figured out what's going on with New Hampshire. California is doing great. I love all the people here. And I've done work with Angela when she was still here. I thought she was really good as far as an administrator and a leader. I was very impressed. I've been fine with it. I don't know. We're not going to change California, but it's a fun group to hang out with, I guess.
I think the thing that's going on with New Hampshire is Reed and Jeremy Kaufman. Those two guys like to stir the pot. They really do, and It's like, all right, they get some attention, because they'll say things that are they say things in a way, they say true things in a way that makes people react, and they're good at it. It's like a Ryan Dawson type figure, like he's good at stating truths in such a way that people react to him, and I don't, I have no beef with the Mises Caucus. It's just what I see going on is that it's less about the ideas and more about a handful of people. And I'm like, okay, like if I wanted, to elevate somebody onto a pedestal and kind of make a whole movement around them, well, Trump already did that. Why wouldn't I just join that group instead of like some smaller group, because ultimately in that game of politics, isn't your goal to win anyway? So if I really wanted to go upon the messianic route, then I would do something, that would be effective and not just play around over on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my biggest problem always with politics is the way that politicians get elevated. That's always been my issue.
Yeah. Well, and I hope I'm not being a little bitch about this. I mean, like, I've noticed that I do all these appearances, and all it seems like I do is just bitch and moan and complain about how people don't listen to me or what I'm saying, because it really does just
What?
Yoga pants. Get some yoga pants on.
Right.
Wait, what did you say? No, I'm playing.
It's all just this. I mean, it's all just.
I wasn't listening. Sorry, huh?
It's all this personal stuff with me, man. I mean, it's like I'm out here on an island. I don't have any friends in this world in like real space, really.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, so many years just sending things off into the ether, and it just seems like it's a waste of time. And then I just bitch about it. So
we're all libertarians. None of us have real friends. That's why we do this.
Of course.
Sure. But Patrick, you make such a good point, because I concerned about that myself. Like I see this tweet and I'm like, I reacted, and or the other one, the landlord tenant, and I researched every single state. It's like, why? Just so I could put a tweet out and then a response and whatever. And it's like, okay, but in my defense, this is like my area. Yeah. So when you put in everything else, and it's kind of what I said about Phil Magnus was a prime example. He did a 1619 project, wonderful stuff. Then he goes on Reason Magazine and he talks about Hans Hermann Hoppe, and he misrepresents such an easy thing to do. And I go, but if you're wrong about this, then maybe you're wrong about I don't know what to. So now I'm concerned, right? Because I see it in my little world that is so easy for me to take an issue with. By the way, they did tweet out a thing about the Ninth Circuit here in California had an issue with CPS where they were trying to claim qualified immunity to be able to lie. And I looked that one up. I watched the whole thing. They were perfectly fine on that one of being outraged, but actually the Ninth Circuit squashed the CPS one. So, there's good and bad that come out of the Mises Caucus tweets.
Yeah. And I didn't even intend for this to turn into a Mises Caucus bash fest. I mean, I don't have an issue with the people I know that are involved with the Mises Caucus. I do know that a lot of people that were involved with them early on have stepped away. And so there is an internal battle going on. And a lot of it has to do with between states that want a little bit more control of the caucus within their state. And that's fine. Let them fight that out. I don't really care about that too much. I live in Texas. The Libertarian Party down here is cancer anyway. So
just so surprising.
It wouldn't do me a damn bit. But it's because anybody that is pro-liberty in Texas is GOP. Right? I mean, the GOP here in Texas isn't great, but it's a little bit more. It gives more lip service to freedom than the GOP in other places. Right. So you'll get like Greg Abbott coming out saying that the property taxes are bad because Texans don't rent their property from the government. Like he'll at least give lip service to it. Right. It doesn't mean anything ever gets done, but he knows the perspective of most of the people in Texas. So you find a lot more of your freedom-minded people in Texas are aligned with the GOP. But the problem I have is the reason that we do what we do, that Patrick has put thousands of hours into this, that Tyler's put thousands of hours into this, that I've put 5-6 dozen hours into it, is because but it's because we want solutions. Yeah. We're trying to figure out, how can we help you maneuver this? How can we help you see this and maneuver it? And there is a problem within the libertarian space that reminds me of the Democratic Party, of this immaturity, this unwillingness to take on that personal responsibility. And we have to step back from cases like this. As much as we want that knee-jerk reaction of, look how horrible the state is and look how they're victimizing these children, we have to step back and say, what is best for these children? What is best for this family? And we have to understand that when you go into a divorce, and it's just one of the main reasons I wanted Tyler on here, is when you're going through this family court system, there are emotions galore. And none of this stuff is clean and easy to maneuver. Even from Tyler's perspective, I guarantee you, he's had clients where he was he was very empathetic to their plight, and he found out things that he's like, man, see, it's not that easy. It's not that clean. Everybody's got a little bit of dirt in here because nobody's perfect. Every person involved in this is bringing their own garbage into it. And so when we look at these situations, I think the most important thing to figure out is what is best and healthier for the children, and not to just jump to these reactionary standpoints and act like we have all the answers, because it's not a cut and dry thing when you're getting involved in tearing a family apart.
Yeah, completely. Nothing more to really add. The only thing I would say, I do have a crappy little Substack, and it's sometimes just to formulate my thoughts, and I do all my podcasts up there as well. And I did write one called something like the Libertarian in the Family Courts or something like that. And I'm trying to help gentlemen out there how to walk themselves through this. So I would say, go ahead and read, especially if you're going through some of this, maybe go ahead and read it, and it'll give you some ideas of what to do and not to do. And if you're behind the 8 ball and you think that the family courts are against you, which they probably are, then you better be more prepared than not, or you're going to come out of it looking bad. And then you're going to be that men's rights guy that nothing happens to me. And you're not going to see your kids, but you might have some notoriety because you get on a podcast talking about it. So what's the way you want to go about that?
Yeah. Well, do y'all have anything more y'all want to add on this subject? Specifically the legal side of it?
No, not really. I mean,
sounds like my ducks are driving my wife up the wall. They keep chasing the dogs into the house.
We don't want you to get divorced.
Yeah.
No, she might divorce my ducks, but she's not going to divorce me. I'm not worried about that. I might walk out to a duck dinner tonight, but
I'll say one thing that you made me think of earlier, which was, so I've been divorced, and I remember coming out of that, even though it was 99% her fault. I'm like, if that 1% is anything to do with me, I don't want to make those mistakes going forward. So what can I do in the next time to not have that problem? And it was finding that right person. Finding the right person in your life is the most amazing thing you can do. I've been married now to the second wife for 10 years, wonderful life. But I made sure I found that right person, and took a lot of time to do it. And you got to make corrections in your own life. And I think that's an important thing that we can all learn from here. You know, you make mistakes, figure out why you did it, and don't do the same thing the next time. It's men. I mean, that's my dating, family advice for your business and everything. So.
Yeah, it can go real bad. I've seen it go real bad, and I've only been doing divorces for, a couple years. So, yep.
Yeah, it's not a pretty picture. And I made a lot of the mistakes, especially with my first marriage. I made a lot of the mistakes that Tyler talks about, is not showing up, representing myself, and et cetera, et cetera. I didn't have a job at the time. I was depressed. I was going through a lot, and I just like threw my hands up, just like give up, screw it. And nothing's going my way, so I'm just going to feel bad for myself. And I've learned a lot since then. I was 21 years old when that happened, 22 years old, something like that. And a lot of the kids I'm going to keep going back to that. A lot of the kids that have podcasts, that are getting big on podcasts, that are out there speaking, I'll listen to them. I'll hear what they're saying, and I'll be like, man, they just don't have any life experience. They have no clue what they're talking about, but they're saying things that people want to hear, that it's, in this, there's this huge movement, and we've all seen it, and we're all close to the same age. And so we noticed this in the 90s with the giving everybody a trophy kind of thing. And I remember there was a radio show I used to listen to in the mornings, Stevens and Pruitt, and they were like calling it the pussification of America, right? And that's all they talked about every morning. Helicopter parents, and participation trophies, and et cetera, et cetera. But it did weaken the mentality of people, and I even find myself, falling into funks where I'm like, I don't want to do anything, like this shit should be easy. This shit should be done. Like, I don't have to do anything, and I have to pull myself out of it. And discipline is something you have to stay on top of. And so building podcasts and audiences and law firms and all these things that we do in our lives as adults, this takes time and effort and discipline that we have to stay on top of. And we have this victim mentality, this victim culture. And it's, even if you look at Donald Trump, and his rise into the political, he was always the victim. And that's what he sold everybody. It was always about grievances and this, that, and the other. And we have to get away from popularizing that mentality.
Yeah. He's still the victim. Let's be honest.
Well, and to have some humility.
You don't know what it's like to be orange.
I was just thinking about the indictment. Go ahead.
Well, to have some humility for myself, I'm 29 years old, and maybe I shouldn't be going around feeling like I'm entitled to be listened to,
No, I would say this. And once again, I'm a fan of the Mises Caucus. I'm a member. I'm not going to be stopping, but I'm doing things, and we're speaking out because I'm kind of an expert in one particular area. So I'm going to forge forward on this as well. And I'm going to align myself with Patrick and Tommy again on this. And so be it. And you're not a victim here, Patrick. You can complain all you want. People should listen to you. They should go to your podcast. They should listen to it more. They should check out your China documentary, all the things you do. I don't know why you're not blowing up.
Well, I appreciate. Thank you, Tyler. You know what? I will say, Tyler, you were so helpful to me when I decided to start my firm. And that short conversation we had about it was so instrumental in my decision to forge my own path. And you were exactly right. It's the best thing I've ever done. So
good. Love to hear
it. And I'll co-sign on what Tyler just said. I think, Patrick, you have one of the better podcasts out there as far as information goes. Like you do so much research and so much work, and it's evident in what you present. So I hope you don't stop, because I enjoy what you put out.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. It's a little gay, but it really does help me. It's fucking hard, dude. Anyway,
everybody your age is a little gay. Don't worry about it. Yeah. You'll grow out of it.
Well, good. I turned 30 this summer, so
that might help. Once you start getting the gray hairs.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 52. How old are you, Tommy?
I'm 43.
Oh, I'm such a fucking old.
Don't worry, you still look better than me. So
I don't know about that, but either way,
I look about as beat up as I am. So
all right.
But all right, well, let's plug away, Tyler. Plug everything, your Substack and everything.
Just go to Tyler, TYLER JANKE on Twitter. There's a link tree. It'll find you for everything. My Substack, my Libertarian podcast review. By the way, here's what I'm doing right now. I have gone through, I'm almost ready to, I've started recording some of this. I'm doing a Tom Woods week. I've gone from episode 0 up through 2300, and I'm pulling clips. I'm doing a whole breakdown of his show. So that is coming up, and I've recorded. Day 1 was 2 hours, so I had to cut it up. So it's going to be like a 7-day thing, and it's going to be just put one out, boom, 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 boom. But he has an amazing catalog of people that's been on the show. So it's been quite the labor of love, and I'm kind of tired of the 3x5 card of insanity. Anyway, check that out.
That's intense, dude.
Yeah. Andy said, do Scott Horton's, and I said, no, he's got too many. Sorry, go ahead.
He needs more Michael Bolden is what he needs, man. That guy's a gem.
Question: who's been the guest on Tom Woods' show the most? Any idea?
I thought I saw your tweet about this. Oh, fuck. I think it wasn't Scott, was it?
It's Scott Horton is tied with Michael Malice. I think it's both 43 times.
Oh, really? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I thought Bolden was on a lot, but it was actually less than I.
It's been like 10. He was the first guest too. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, you can find my work at vitaldissent.com or libertarianinstitute.org/Patrick. That's where you can find that.
I need to remember whenever I do my intro that you change the name of your podcast, because I always forget that. And I still say Liberty Weekly. So
my producer, my good buddy Mises Pieces, he came up with the new show name, and I think I really like it a lot because it's punchy but Liberty Weekly it's a special place in my heart.
Yeah. Well, you did that for a long time.
Yeah.
And so, all right. Well, I'm going to end the recording, and I don't have anything else.
Thanks, Tommy.
All right, guys.